Hi, I'm Devin from Careerified. Welcome back to the living room. This week I wanted to take a look at, sort of our perceptions of intelligence and smartness, and how that impacts our post-secondary and career decisions. When you think about it, we kind of have this pervasive idea that being smart and going to university sort of fit together, right? When you encounter somebody who's very, very intelligent, you either assume that they have been university educated or that they ought to be university educated. And then that really colors what we think about people who've gone to college or who have gone through the apprenticeship process. And it's interesting because when you think about the types of jobs that people have after they have completed apprenticeship or college, those are not jobs where you want people to be, not very smart, right? Think about the people who build your house, who keep your car running properly, effectively, and, without you getting dead, people who issue you medication in the hospital, people who show up at your house in a life-saving situation. These are all college and apprenticeship grads. And yet university carries all this prestige and weight about intelligence with it. As a parent, you may have a front row seat to this right now. If your kid has applied to university and so have a lot of their friends, you may be kind of watching them as they see their friends receive early offers of admission. I don't know why that's so hard to say. And they might be starting to feel down on themselves. At this point, I doubt they would have gotten a sorry, you don't fit, unless they really, really, really don't fit. But that does happen sometimes too. So the challenge, of course, as a parent is then you're watching your kid sort of start to think, maybe I'm not that smart. And then maybe I'm not that smart's cousin, I'm not good enough, shows up and camps out for a while. And that's hard, right? That's a really hard thing to watch. So I wanted to share a little anecdote with you. Years ago, I was having this very conversation with a friend of mine. And at that point, I'm going to say it was maybe 20-ish years ago. So I had completed university. Well, that was 20 years ago. Anyway, I had completed university and I had done a 1-year graduate certificate program as well. So I had undergraduate and graduate studies under my belt. My friend, meanwhile, had been issued an academic suspension at the end of his second year of university. An academic suspension is when the school forces you to withdraw because your grades are so terrible, they're not allowed to let you continue. I should point out too that he had been accepted into the school that had the lowest admission average for to get in. So essentially he got into the easiest school that was to get into in Ontario and then got kicked out for having bad grades. You can see how his confidence would be a little shaken. His assumption, though, out of it was that because I had a degree and then some, and he wasn't able to complete the degree, was that I was smarter than him. Now, this is somebody that I always found to be quite witty, very well read, seemed to be very knowledgeable and have really intelligent opinions about world issues and current events. So I'm sitting there going, I'm pretty sure you don't have a very accurate picture of yourself right now. So I did what any good friend would do, and I challenged him to an IQ test. I know IQ tests come with a lot of controversy, but we did have very similar socioeconomic statuses. Our parents had very similar job titles and income levels. Our elementary schools were about a 30-minute walk from one another, and we'd actually gone to the same high school. So as far as candidates for standardized testing, we were a pretty good match. So we started looking around. You can find IQ tests online. Some of them are valid and some of them are, BuzzFeed quizzes. Although BuzzFeed didn't exist in those days. In those days, you could also go to Future Shop and pick up a CD-ROM for a little blast from the past for you. The point is, we did this not once, but many, many times, probably a good half dozen over the next year. Every single time, he scored 20 points higher than me. 20 points. We're not talking about a couple, 20. He was absolutely floored by that. I wasn't. Didn't surprise me at all. Having gone through the post-secondary process at that point twice, it's been a few more since then, I could have easily told him, and I did, that completing post-secondary, really completing any large project, is much, much more about self-discipline and effort than it is about smarts. And that's where he was getting hung up. You hear career stories and how they progress, and they come in all different shapes and sizes. So you'll hear about the person who seemingly came out of nowhere and shot right up into the C-suite. You'll hear about other people who were, the celebrated Wunderkind when they graduated from university, with companies vying for them. And then it turned out that they're still toiling away in middle management, 15, 20 years after they were hired. So I guess my point here is there are a lot of factors that build a career. Getting a particular credential or failing to get a particular credential is one tiny piece of the puzzle. And at this stage of the game, your kids are so young. In a lot of cases, I know when I'm talking to people, your kids aren't even 20 years old yet. And so there's no way the game is over for them. All it means, if they don't get into whatever the program is they want to get into, all that means is they just need to regroup and try again. If this straight shot to the program didn't work, my experience tells me there is always a back door. There's always another way to get in. There are alternate routes to get to wherever you want to go. So now is a good time to help boost their confidence to find some of those alternate routes, because whether or not they get into their program of choice, it's not an indicator of the type of person that they are. It's not an indicator of their intelligence or their potential. It just means it didn't work this time. That's it. So my tip for this week is to remember that education and intelligence are not the same thing. They play very, very nicely together, but they're not the same thing. So if your kids are kind of struggling with some decisions that are starting to come at them and they're feeling a little bit out of control, now's a good time to start looking for alternates. What are ways they can up skills? What are ways they can boost their grades? What are ways they can find out about alternate careers that are related to the thing that they would like to do? And how can that maybe help get them into the goal that they're aiming for? Thanks so much for joining me. I will see you back here next week for a new tip.